There's a sacred sound that lives beneath all sound. It is not loud, it is not urgent, and it is not outside of you. It is the still hum of your eternal being, a vibration so gentle, so constant, that it is often drowned out by the noise of your thinking, the clutter of your conditioning, and the hurried chase of your ego. But it is always there, waiting. Like an ancient friend who never left, just quietly sat beside you, trusting you'd one day remember to listen. This is the sound of silence. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of truth. You were not born into noise. You arrived as silence. The infant does not seek to be impressive, clever, or approved of. The infant is simply here. No story, no shame, no schedule. Just being, just presence, just soul. And it is in that state, untouched by past, unseduced by future, that the divine speaks clearest, not through thunder or spectacle, but through the quiet whisper that arises when the mind finally surrenders its grasp and the heart opens to the eternal. You have been told to seek answers. You have been taught to strive, to push, to acquire information and validation and success. But the greatest truths will not be shouted through effort. They will be revealed in stillness. Not because they are hiding, but because you are running. Running from moment to moment, from task to task, from thought to thought, from self to self. And yet, everything you are running toward is resting peacefully inside the very silence you keep avoiding. The world teaches us that silence is empty, but silence is not empty. Silence is full. It holds the totality of wisdom, the blueprint of every sacred life, the knowing that existed before language ever did. Silence is the space where your soul sings without needing to be heard. It is where your fear dissolves, not because it is solved, but because it is seen through. Silence reveals that there was never anything to solve, only illusions to let go of. We confuse activity with purpose. We confuse noise with value. And so we shout our affirmations, we obsess over fixing ourselves, we perform our spirituality like a show. But the soul is not impressed by performance. The soul does not clap when you look awakened. It only smiles when you are. An awakening is not a performance. It is a return, a homecoming to that original silence where you are not this role, not this pain, not even this name. You are awareness itself. In silence, you stop being a person with problems. You become a presence with power. Because the problems only exist in the theater of mind, and silence turns off the projector. Suddenly you realize the struggle was never out there. It was the noise you allowed in here. It was the commentary, the resistance, the narrative. And when the narrative pauses, so does the suffering. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped believing your thoughts were the world. When you begin to rest in silence, not as an escape, but as a return, you realize something extraordinary. That all your searching was holy, but unnecessary. You never had to become enough. You already were. You never had to find peace. You just had to stop fighting yourself long enough to feel it. You never had to be saved. Only reminded. We live in a society that glorifies answers but fears stillness. But stillness is the answer. Not a word, not a doctrine, not a formula, but a state of being. Stillness is the meeting point between you and God, where no translation is needed. No achievements, no apologies, no explanations, just presence, just truth, just you, stripped of all the noise you thought you needed to be loved. You may have believed that healing requires struggle, but healing is what happens when struggle ceases. Healing begins not when you try harder, but when you surrender deeper. It begins when you finally sit, not with an agenda, but with reverence. When you stop performing your pain and begin witnessing it. when you stop asking, how do I fix this? And begin asking, who is aware of this? Because in that question, something shifts. The pain becomes a cloud and you, the sky. Silence reminds you that you are not the storm. You are the space in which the storm appears. The emotions will rise and fall. The thoughts will dance and disappear. The stories will come and go. But who you are does not move. Who you are is not a wave. It is the ocean. And the ocean is never afraid of its waves. There is a divine intelligence that lives in you, not outside you, not above you, not later, but now. It does not speak in language, but in presence. It does not need convincing. It already knows. It is the voice that says, you are held, even when your mind says you are falling. It is the pulse that reminds you in every breath that you are enough simply because you are. And the more you listen, the less you chase. The more you feel it, the less you need. You do not need to yell at the universe to be heard. You only need to be quiet enough to hear it whisper back. It has always been whispering, but not into your ears, into your awareness. Not into your intellect, into your being. And the only thing that ever blocked the message was the belief that it should come in a different form. The mind says, give me proof. But the soul says, just feel. And when you stop needing your healing to look dramatic and instead let it feel sacred, you will know the answer was never far. It was right here. Underneath the noise, beneath the drama, beneath the grasping, the answer you seek is in silence. Because in silence, you become what you seek. You do not find peace. You remember that you are peace. And if you are brave enough to sit in that silence without your mask, without your resume, without your wounds, something astonishing begins to happen. The false self begins to fade. The roles begin to melt. The seeking begins to slow. And in the space that's left, a presence arises. Gentle, quiet, but unmistakable. It does not demand attention because it already has your love. It does not try to impress you because it is you. There is a rhythm to life that you cannot hear when you are shouting, but when you become quiet enough, the rhythm returns. It's the rhythm of breath, of grace, of nature. The rhythm of a heart that knows it is connected to something infinite. And in that rhythm, you do not have to force clarity. You do not have to demand purpose. You simply return to what you've always been aware, alive, whole. And the irony is, the more you silence the mind, the louder your soul becomes. Not in volume, but in truth. Not in noise, but in knowing. You become fluent in the language of the present. You begin to see God not as a distant judge, but as the quiet space between your thoughts. You begin to live less from story, more from stillness. Less from effort, more from essence. Let the world keep chasing noise. Let others fill their days with more opinions, more distractions, more labels. You return to the sacred. You return to the place where truth does not have to be explained, only felt. Where your worth is not earned, only remembered. Where your next step does not need to be mapped, only trusted. This is the gift of silence. It doesn't teach you what to think. It teaches you how to listen. And when you listen, truly listen, you hear something profound. Not a new instruction, not a divine commandment, but a remembering. A remembering of what you are beneath the personality. A remembering of the vast, limitless being who has always been whole. A remembering that life is not trying to test you, it's trying to reveal you. So stop waiting for the thunder. Stop demanding that the universe speak in your language. Learn to feel the message in the silence. And you'll realize you were never disconnected. You were just distracted. You were never the noise. You only believed in it. You only learned to identify with it the rushing thoughts, the echoing doubts, the applause and the criticism, the voices that told you who to be, how to perform, what to suppress, and what to fear. But underneath it all, you were the one who heard the noise, not the noise itself. And that which hears the noise is not disturbed by it. That is your essence. And it has never once left you. Silence is not something you create. It is what remains when all the clutter is released. It is what remains when you stop trying to control how you appear and instead allow yourself to be what you are. Silence is the space between judgment and acceptance, between fear and surrender, between the false identity and the true self. In silence, the veil lifts, not with effort, but with grace. And you see clearly not with the eyes, but with the soul. There is a sacred difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is the product of noise, of unconscious habit and conditioned emotion. Response is the fruit of silence. A person who lives in silence does not react from fear. They respond from love. They do not echo the world's chaos. They embody its stillness. They do not need to be loud to be powerful, because their presence speaks louder than any words ever could. The spiritual masters of this world, the ones who radiate peace, they are not empty of emotion. They are empty of illusion. They have stopped identifying with the noise in their head and started listening to the wisdom of the still place within. They are not above suffering. They are simply not ruled by it. They have made a home in the silence. And from that home, they bring light wherever they go. You have the same light. It is not lesser. It is not distant. It only asks that you slow down long enough to see it flickering beneath the rubble. There is a divine intelligence behind all of creation. The tree does not rush its growth. The sun does not force its rise. The river does not panic when the rocks appear. Nature moves in harmony because it does not resist its own unfolding. But we as humans have forgotten how to trust. We interrupt our own peace with mental commentary. We mistake urgency for importance. We judge ourselves by how fast we can move rather than how deeply we can listen. But when you return to silence, you return to nature, you return to the rhythm of the soul, which is slow, soft, eternal. You begin to trust again, not in outcomes, but in alignment. Not in control, but in connection. You realize that life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be felt. And the deeper you go into that presence, the less you need from the outside. Because wholeness is no longer an achievement, it's your starting point. You are not incomplete. You are not a mistake. You are not lost. You are a wave that forgot it belonged to the ocean. And silence is the place where the wave remembers. You do not need more effort. You need more surrender. You do not need to fix your life. You need to witness it without judgment. The ego will tell you to strive. The soul will ask you to rest. Because in resting, you come home. Let it be okay not to have an answer. Let it be okay to sit with the question. Let it be okay to drop the mask you've worn for so long that you forgot what your face looked like. You do not need to impress the divine. You are the divine. And God is not keeping score. God is waiting in the silence not to evaluate you, but to embrace you. There is no punishment in stillness, only revelation. You will not lose anything real by going silent. You will only lose the noise that was pretending to be real. You will only lose the false self, the one who needed to prove, to earn, to defend, to shout. The real self has no need for any of that. The real self is already whole, already enough, already divine, and it lives always in the silence. Listen not with your ears, but with your being. Listen to the spaces between the words. Listen to the breath between the thoughts. Listen to the presence behind the moment. This is where God lives. This is where truth lives. This is where you live when you finally stop trying to be someone and remember how to simply be. You have been seeking peace as if it were somewhere else. But peace is not a location. It is a return to your natural frequency. And you cannot return by running, only by stopping, only by letting go, only by releasing the belief that peace must be earned or that truth must be proven. Peace is not proven, it is felt. And it is felt in the moment when you become quiet enough to notice what has always been here. The past has a voice, the future has a voice, but neither voice belongs to now. And now is where your power lives. Now is where the soul breathes. Now is where healing happens. You do not heal by understanding the past. You heal by letting go of the need to drag it into the present. You do not awaken by fearing the future. You awaken by realizing that the present moment is eternal and nothing truly sacred can be missed from it. In silence, there is no comparison. There is no competition. There is no one to be better than, no one to be beneath. In silence, there is no role to play. There is only love, only presence, only truth. It is in silence that you remember the unshakable truth. You were never broken. You were simply buried under ideas that never belonged to you. The answer you seek is not louder than your pain. It is softer than your thoughts. It is not above you or beyond you. It is within you, waiting for you to stop pushing and start allowing. To stop asking what's next and start asking what's now, because what's now is where the divine is dancing. What's now is where the sacred breath of life is still singing you into existence. And it sings the same song to all of us. Be still. You are already home. You do not need more knowledge. You need less noise. The noise is not just in your environment, it's in your head. It's the static of a mind conditioned to fear stillness, to equate being with doing, and to see rest as laziness rather than reverence. But when you are silent, you begin to unlearn the false truths you were taught. You realize that everything you were chasing was born of the belief that you were not already whole. And that belief, not your circumstances, was the source of your suffering. The mind is loud because it is unsure. The soul is silent because it is certain. Certainty does not shout. Truth does not need volume. Real wisdom arrives like the sunrise, not with fanfare, but with radiance. It does not beg to be noticed. It simply illuminates. And silence is the place where this illumination becomes visible. Not outside you, within you. You have confused silence with absence. But silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of space. The space in which sound arises, dances, and dissolves. Just as you are not your thoughts, but the space in which thoughts appear. Just as you are not your body, but the awareness that watches the body age while the spirit remains ageless, you are the one who sees, the one who knows, the one who simply is. And this one, this infinite presence cannot be harmed, cannot be diminished, cannot be lost. It can only be forgotten in noise. Let the silence teach you. Let it teach you that your wounds are not who you are, that your worth was never up for negotiation, that you do not need to climb a ladder to touch God, you only need to sit down and listen. The higher self does not live in the clouds, it lives in the breath, in the pause. In the moment you stop trying to be and simply become aware that you already are, every moment spent in silence is a homecoming, a return from exile, a reunion with the source that never left you, only waited patiently for you to remove the walls. You thought life abandoned you, but it didn't. You just forgot how to hear it. You mistook the silence for punishment when it was actually an invitation to stop, to breathe, to feel the divine frequency beneath the chaos. There is a holiness in quiet moments that the ego cannot comprehend, because the ego thrives on noise. It defines itself by conflict, by identity, by motion. The ego says, be more, do more, prove more. But the soul whispers, you are. That's it. You are. Not what they said, Not what you did, not what you feared, just you are. That is the beginning of freedom. Not a transformation into something else, but a return to what has always been. When you learn to be still, you become intimate with the divine. Not through belief, but through being. You don't need a new belief system. You need an undisturbed moment with your own presence. That is where you meet God, not through dogma, but through awareness. Not through rituals alone, but through the reverence of attention. There is no temple more sacred than the present moment. No scripture more direct than your breath. You are not behind. You are not too late. You have not failed. These are stories written by the mind that does not yet trust the unfolding of life. But the soul has no calendar. It only has now. And in the now, there is no judgment, only clarity. There is no guilt, only understanding. There is no shame, only compassion. The silence knows this. It is not against you. It is holding you. Softly, constantly, waiting only for you to become still enough to feel it. There are seasons in your life when words will not be enough, when advice will ring hollow, when the mind, no matter how brilliant, cannot lead you home. In these seasons, silence becomes your teacher. A teacher that says nothing, yet shows you everything. A teacher that gives no answers, yet dissolves every false question. A teacher that does not fix you because you were never broken, only buried beneath noise. If you could only sit in silence long enough, you would begin to feel the edges of your identity melt. The roles you've played, the expectations you've carried, the wounds you've named yourself after all, begin to fall away. And what is left is not a void, it is not emptiness, it is fullness. The fullness of being. The stillness that speaks louder than any accomplishment ever could. This silence is not passive. It is not weak. It is the most powerful force in the universe. It creates worlds. It births stars. It transmutes pain. It dissolves fear. It reminds you of your eternal nature. And when you align with it, you stop trying to win at life. You start dancing with it. You stop trying to survive. You stop trying to protect yourself from the moment, and instead you surrender to its intelligence. The greatest truth is this. The answer is not hidden. The answer is not far. The answer is not complicated. The answer is within. It is not a formula. It is a frequency. And that frequency cannot be understood through analysis. It can only be felt through presence. The answer is not a thing to be found. It is a state to be remembered. And silence is the gateway to that remembrance. You were not sent here to perform. You were not sent here to accumulate titles. You were sent here to remember the truth of what you are. You were sent here to learn how to be not someone, but presence itself. You were sent here to know yourself, not as the identity, but as the observer of all identities. And once you know yourself in that way, you are free. Not because the world changed, but because your awareness did. Let the noise fall away. Let the urgency dissolve. Let the chasing end. Let yourself land here, now, in the sacred simplicity of silence, where nothing needs to happen for everything to be complete, where you are not becoming, you are being, where you are not achieving, you are allowing, where you are not demanding from life, you are receiving its grace. And when you emerge from silence, you do not return the same. You return lighter, clearer, more loving. Not because you gained anything, but because you remembered everything. The fog lifts, the heart opens, the mind relaxes, and the soul rejoices because you came back. You came back to yourself. And in doing so, you came back to life. The more you live in silence, the more you become aware of a deeper guidance that was never missing, only muffled. You begin to feel your intuition not as a rare occurrence, but as your native language. You begin to notice synchronicity, where once you saw coincidence, you begin to trust your own path. not because it is guaranteed, but because it is sacred. And that trust, born of silence, becomes your anchor in a world addicted to noise. No longer do you need to chase what others chase. No longer do you need to explain what cannot be explained. You begin to live gently, yet powerfully. You begin to embody presence, not as an effort, but as your essence. You walk slower, you speak less, you listen more. You watch your own mind with compassion, and you watch others through the eyes of understanding, not judgment. This is the gift of silence. It changes how you see, not what you see. The world remains the same, yet you are different. And in that difference, everything is transformed. You begin to feel beauty in the ordinary. You begin to appreciate what you once overlooked. You see divinity not only in sunsets and temples, but in traffic lights, in wrinkles, in the silence between two people who no longer need words to know they are loved. The answer you seek has never been outside your reach, but it has always been outside your noise. And now that the noise is quiet, you can see clearly again. You can feel again. You can breathe in life, not as a means to an end, but as the end itself. Each breath is a prayer. Each moment is a temple. Each act of presence is an offering. And you are the altar. Even your pain becomes different in silence. Not because it disappears, but because it loses its grip. It no longer defines you, it teaches you. It no longer owns you, it flows through you. You begin to see that even your suffering was part of the return. That even the loudest seasons of your life were nudging you back toward quiet. That your heartbreak was not a punishment, but a portal. A sacred crack through which the light could reach you again. The ego resists this truth. It wants things to be more complex, more dramatic. It wants a formula, a story, a reason to cling to its identity. But the soul only wants freedom. And freedom does not need noise. It needs awareness. It needs trust. It needs surrender. Not surrender as defeat, surrender as alignment, surrender as the courage to release what was never yours to carry. When you touch silence deeply, you realize that the self you've been defending was never who you were, that all your walls were made of thought, that all your masks were inherited roles. And in that realization, a soft peace arises, not the peace of the world, but the peace of the soul, a peace that does not depend on circumstances because it was never created by them. You no longer wait for life to be perfect before you feel peace. You bring peace to life as it is. You no longer pray for change from desperation. You pray from gratitude, knowing that even without a single external shift, you are already held, already loved, already home. And from this home, everything becomes possible. The stillness becomes your compass, not because it gives you all the answers, but because it connects you to the source that doesn't need them. You move not with urgency, but with clarity. Not with panic, but with power. Not with fear, but with faith. The world may still pull at you, but you are no longer pulled apart. You return to silence like a river returns to the ocean, effortlessly, without question, because it knows where it belongs. And from that place, your very presence becomes a gift to others. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You advise less, but your energy heals. You convince no one, yet your being inspires. Because in a world that shouts, your silence becomes magnetic. In a world that performs, your authenticity becomes medicine. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to earn anyone's respect. You no longer need to pretend, because silence has stripped you down to what is real. And what is real does not need to be explained. It only needs to be lived. And so you begin to live not as a seeker of answers, but as a bearer of presence. Not as someone trying to find their worth, but as someone who finally remembered they never lost it. You are not your history. You are not your habits. You are not even your name. You are the awareness that sees all of it, the consciousness behind the curtain. You are the witness, the still point, the unshakable essence that watches the waves come and go without becoming them. And the more you reside in that space, the more life opens up without force, because life recognizes itself in you. And where recognition flows, miracles do too. This is not philosophy, it is remembrance. This is not theory, it is truth, felt directly when all the distractions fall away. And what remains is not a lesser version of you, it is the real you, the radiant you, the you who never needed fixing, only uncovering, the you who has been silently waiting for you to stop running, to stop pretending, to stop performing, and just be. So sit in silence today. Not to achieve anything, but to release everything. Not to become spiritual, but to remember you already are. Let the silence cleanse you. Let it dissolve your tension. Let it hold your fear without needing to resolve it. Let it remind you that you were never abandoned, only invited. And now, finally, you've accepted. There will still be noise in the world, but you do not have to let it live in you. There will still be moments of doubt, of fear, of noise rising again, but that is okay, because now you know the way back. Now you have tasted what is real. And once you have tasted it, you cannot forget it. You can only return again and again to the place that never left. The answer you seek is in silence. And in that silence, you will not just find the answer, you will find yourself. And in finding yourself, you will discover you were the answer all along. There comes a moment, not on the clock of the world, but on the clock of the soul, where something inside you whispers or perhaps finally dares to shout that you were never meant to stay dim. You were never meant to fold yourself small enough to fit someone else's mold. You were not designed to tiptoe through life, hoping not to disturb the expectations that have kept you hidden. No, you were born to shine, to radiate with such fullness that even your shadow begins to glow. But the tragedy, the gentle, avoidable tragedy, is that so many wait. They wait for applause. They wait for validation. They wait for someone to tell them, it's your turn now. But what if the permission you've been waiting for is already within you? The truth is, no one will hand you a golden key and say, now you may become yourself. Life does not offer certificates for authenticity. There is no degree in being real. Your soul came here not to be approved of, but to be revealed. You were not born to seek light from others. You were born to remember that you are the light. When you wait for permission, you're forgetting the truth of your being. You're forgetting that the universe does not operate on a system of worthiness metrics. The stars don't ask the sky if it's okay to shine tonight. The ocean doesn't apologize for rising. The trees do not shrink in springtime. They bloom not because they are told they're good enough, but because it is their nature to bloom. And so it is with you. You don't need someone else to recognize your value before you live in it. You don't need the crowd to cheer before you rise. You don't need the world to say now before you speak your truth. The divine essence within you, the infinite intelligence, the sacred energy that breathes you, has never once withheld its approval. Only the ego does that. Only the mind builds prisons out of past experiences and labels them truth. But your soul knows. Your soul remembers the blueprint that existed before you were taught to perform. It knows the sound of your voice before it was tamed. It knows your laughter before it was labeled too loud. It knows your ideas before they were called unrealistic. And so the invitation is this: remember who you are beneath the performance. Reclaim the right to stand tall in your own light. To speak words not rehearsed for safety, but born from your deepest knowing. You were not born for rehearsed approval. You were born for radical authenticity. Let the world adjust. You may have been conditioned to believe that humility means hiding, but true humility is not denial of your gifts. It is reverence for the source from which they come. And if your gifts come from God, from Spirit, from the infinite, then who are you to silence them? Who are you to pretend you are less than divine? Don't confuse shrinking with humility. Don't confuse silence with peace. Don't confuse approval with alignment. Alignment doesn't feel like applause. It feels like freedom. It feels like no longer betraying yourself to be accepted. It feels like no longer dimming your insight to make others more comfortable. It feels like no longer waiting for someone to give you the go-ahead to be magnificent. You see, we live in a world where the masses wait. They wait for a nod from culture, from religion, from family, from media, and in the waiting, their spirit grows weary. Their voice grows hoarse from whispering truths they dare not speak. But your life, your one sacred, luminous life, was never meant to be lived on standby. Why do we wait? We wait because we were taught to fear our power. Because somewhere along the way, we internalize the lie that shining makes others uncomfortable, that authenticity is a risk, that confidence is arrogance. But these are distortions, not truths. Confidence is a form of gratitude. Confidence is saying, thank you, life, for this breath, this body, this idea, this vision. I will not waste them. Arrogance is rooted in separation, but confidence, real confidence, is rooted in unity with Spirit. When you shine from the place of Spirit, you are not outshining anyone. You are inviting others to remember that they too have light. You become a lighthouse, not a spotlight. You become an invitation, not an imposition. You become free. And in your freedom, you give others permission to consider that they too can be free. The world needs your shine. Not the curated version, not the filtered self, not the one that waits for perfect timing. The world needs the real, raw, radiant you. And perhaps more importantly, you need you. You need the you that doesn't ask for permission. You need the you that dares to walk barefoot through the uncertainty and say, still, I choose truth. You need the you that sings even when the world is quiet. You need the you that cries and loves and creates without apology. This is not just about expression. It's about alignment. It's about remembering that the energy that dreamed stars into being also dreamed you. What if you saw yourself that way? What if you treated your thoughts like seeds and your attention like sunlight? What might blossom if you stopped giving all your energy to fear and started feeding faith instead? So many are waiting for a sign, but the sign is you. Your longing is the sign. Your yearning is the compass. Your dissatisfaction is holy. It is the soul's whisper saying, there is more for you. And it's not more achievement, not more applause. It's more alignment, more truth, more light. Stop waiting for perfect. Stop waiting for readiness. Stop waiting for certainty. They are illusions of the ego. Life responds to energy, not hesitation. Spirit speaks to movement, not delay. The moment you declare, I am no longer waiting to be myself, the universe rearranges itself to meet your courage. And yes, not everyone will understand, not everyone will celebrate, but your soul will sigh in relief. And that peace, that deep soul-level peace, is worth more than 1,000 hollow claps. You were not sent here to be understood. You were sent here to be whole, to live a life that feels like you, to breathe air that tastes of freedom, to create not for applause, but for alignment, to love without guardrails, to speak without trembling, to stand without crutches, to shine without waiting. And when you do, when you finally release the need to be allowed something miraculous happens, you begin to see that the world was never your jailer. Your own mind was. You begin to see that all the locked doors were made of paper. You begin to see that your radiance was never the problem. Your forgetting was. And now you remember You remember that you are not your name or your job or your roles. You are a divine expression of infinite intelligence, having a temporary human experience. You remember that your value is not in your doing, but in your being. You remember that you are not broken, you are blooming, not late, not behind, right on divine time. So here's the truth that will set you free. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need to wait. You only need to remember and then shine. ChatGPT, Dernoi, you are the answer to a prayer the universe made to itself. You are not an accident, not an extra, not an accessory to someone else's journey. You are the spark that was sent to illuminate a corner of this vast, hungry world that only your soul knows how to touch. So why dim that flame because someone else forgot how to burn? Why hush your voice because someone else is afraid of their own echo? Why hesitate when every breath you take is already proof that you are chosen? Not chosen above others, but chosen for life, for light, for the sacred task of being utterly, unapologetically you. And still the mind resists. It says, but what if I'm wrong? The ego whispers, what if I fail? But failure only exists in the currency of fear. In the language of the soul, there is only movement, only growth, only becoming. There is no such thing as wasted light. Even the flicker of a candle in the darkest cave changes the atmosphere. Your presence is power. Your energy alters rooms. Your truth ripples through time in ways you may never witness, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Don't ask, who am I to shine? Ask, who am I not to? Don't ask, what will they think of me? Ask, what will I think of myself if I betray this call one more time? Don't ask, what if I'm too much? Ask, what if I'm finally enough for myself? Because that's where the healing begins, when you decide that your life is yours again. When you stop outsourcing your worth and start coming home to the quiet, bold truth of your own being. You are not the version of yourself that others created. You are not the echo of their fears or the canvas of their projections. You are not a reaction. You are a revelation. You are not here to fulfill their stories. You are here to write your own. You are the author, the ink, the page, and the breath that turns it. And when you own that, truly own it, the entire cosmos seems to conspire in your favor, not because you've become something new, but because you've finally become what you always were. There is something holy about no longer needing to be liked. Something liberating about no longer trying to be understood. When you let go of those shackles, you become wild in the most sacred sense. Not reckless, but whole. Not chaotic, but true. You become aligned with the rhythm of your own soul. And that rhythm is what the world has been starving for. Not more carbon copies, not more mimicry, but people who walk with the sound of God in their step and the weight of their own truth in their spine. Do not wait for someone to crown you worthy. You are already royal in the realm of spirit. Do not wait for someone to grant you access to joy. It has always been your birthright. Do not wait for the external to catch up with your internal knowing. Lead with it. Trust that the invisible becomes visible when you live as though it's already real. Walk like it, speak like it, create like it, heal like it. You see, the world doesn't need another polished version of someone else's dream. It needs your raw essence. It needs your tears, your belly laughs, your curious mind, your messy truth. It needs the way you notice beauty in places others overlook. It needs the way you hold space, the way you say what others are afraid to, the way you break open and still bless the sky with gratitude. Permission is a prison if you think it must come from outside you. Real power is quiet, not because it's unsure, but because it doesn't beg. It moves, it decides, it declares. And this is your declaration. I will no longer betray myself for the comfort of others. I will no longer silence my voice so others don't feel confronted by truth. I will no longer tiptoe through my own purpose. I will stand, I will rise, I will shine, and let those who fear light look away. You were not sent here to be agreeable. You were sent here to be aligned. Agreement changes with the wind. Alignment lives in eternity. The moment you choose alignment, even if you tremble, even if your knees shake the moment you choose it, you become a portal for possibility. The universe begins to say, finally, she remembers, he knows, they're ready. And no, it won't always be easy. You will be challenged. You will be doubted. You may even doubt yourself. But the soul doesn't ask for easy, it asks for true. The soul doesn't crave comfort, it craves expansion. And when you give it that, when you say yes to the full expression of yourself, healing happens in dimensions you cannot see. You become the mirror others didn't know they were looking for. You become the invitation others didn't know they were waiting for. You become the example of what it looks like to be free. Not because you did everything right, but because you stopped pretending you were wrong to begin with. This is not just about you. This is about the ripple you create by becoming real. Every act of courage, every moment you speak from the soul sends a wave into the collective field. You liberate not only yourself, but all those silently waiting for someone to go first. So go first. Be the one who doesn't flinch when others win. Be the one who speaks kindness in rooms where cruelty is fashionable. Be the one who listens to their inner voice louder than the world's noise. Be the one who forgives, because freedom matters more than resentment. Be the one who shines, not because it's easy, but because it's your truth. And when you live like this, your life becomes not just a journey, but a testimony. A living, breathing, radiant proof that you never needed permission. Only remembrance, only courage, only love. Because that's what it all comes down to. Love. Not the shallow version sold in stories, but the deep, unwavering, untamed love that says, I see you, I honor you, I will no longer betray you. That kind of love is the soil from which your radiance grows. That kind of love is the only foundation strong enough to hold the full expression of who you are. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not unfinished. You are unfolding like the sky at dawn, soft, then bold, then glorious. And just like the sun doesn't ask the moon for permission to rise, neither should you. Just rise. Even if they don't clap, rise. Even if they call it selfish, rise. Even if your voice shakes, rise. Even if you're unsure, rise. Because the rising is not a performance, it's a return to truth, a return to source, a return to the you that always was, underneath the noise, beneath the masks, beyond the waiting. And the moment you stop waiting, you start living, truly living. No longer acting out someone else's script, but writing your own in bold, bright, beautiful strokes. So shine, dear soul. Shine because you can. Shine because you must. Shine because you were born to. And in your shining, may others remember they are light too. Let this be the turning point, not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions feel favorable, but now. Because now is all you've ever truly had. The future is an echo of your present decisions, and the past is a teacher, not a master. So drop the illusion that your greatness is somewhere out there waiting for the perfect alignment. The alignment begins inside. It begins with a quiet yes, a yes to yourself, to your voice, to your vision. That yes ripples through your nervous system like electricity awakening dormant wires, and suddenly what was sleeping begins to rise. And when you rise, you will scare the parts of others still pretending to sleep. They may project, they may retreat, they may misunderstand, but remember, that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay in the light even when it feels unfamiliar, even when it's lonely, even when the echo of doubt calls you back into the shadows. Because you weren't meant to dwell in the shadows of your potential. You were meant to illuminate them. You were meant to take the unloved parts of yourself and say, even you belong. You were meant to gather the rejected corners of your being and bring them home to integrate, not exile, to forgive, not condemn, to heal, not hide. And as you do this, you become whole, not perfect, not polished, but whole, a living embodiment of divine restoration. You don't need to wait until you've fixed every flaw to show up in your brilliance. That's another trick of the ego, that you must earn your place, that you must prove your worthiness, but you were born worthy. Before the labels, before the roles, before the conditioning, you were whole. You are still whole. Your light does not depend on your performance, it depends on your remembrance. So remember this, you are not your mistakes. You are not your regrets. You are not your trauma. You are the consciousness that has endured. You are the presence that has grown. You are the soul that has learned to rise not in spite of it all, but because of it. And that's why your shine matters. Because it's not naive, it's not pretend, it's not surface deep. It is the light forged in fire, born from the ashes of your becoming. It is the shine of someone who has walked through darkness and still chose love. The shine of someone who has faced silence and still chose voice. The shine of someone who has known rejection and still chose to open. You are that shine. And every moment you choose to live from that place, from love, from truth, from courage, you alter the frequency of this planet. Not metaphorically, literally. Your consciousness becomes a signal, and others, still lost in the fog of waiting, feel that signal. They feel your freedom, and something in them remembers their own. You don't shine for validation. You shine because it's medicine. You shine because the world is sick with fear, and your authenticity is the antidote. You shine because it is the most honest thing you can do, the most spiritual thing, the most healing thing. And this shine doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's the soft no that honors your boundaries. Sometimes it's the silent prayer you whisper for a stranger. Sometimes it's the decision to rest when the world pushes productivity. Sometimes it's just being fully, freely, unapologetically you. No mask, no pretense, just essence. And as you do this, the old world begins to fade. The world of pretending, of performing, of seeking outside what only exists within, that world crumbles in the presence of truth. And you, your soul, your radiance, your voice become the bridge to something new. A world where people remember they were always free. A world where hearts speak louder than algorithms. A world where permission is obsolete because truth has taken its place. So shine, not for approval, but for revolution. Shine, not to be better than, but to be more of. Shine, not as a performance, but as a prayer. A prayer that says, I remember who I am. I remember what I came for. I remember that I am not separate from the divine. I am an expression of it. And I no longer wait for the world to allow that. I choose it. I choose it now. Let that be your mantra. I choose it now. I choose to live, to love, to speak, to be now. Not someday, not maybe, now. Because the world doesn't need another obedient soul. It needs a soul on fire. A soul so fully awake that even silence becomes a sermon. A soul so deeply aligned that even their presence is a liberation. That's what you are. That's what you've always been. So breathe in your enoughness. Breathe out the waiting. Walk in your knowing. Stand in your presence. and shine like it's what you were born to do, because it is. And so we arrive at the holy edge of remembering the place where all pretending ends and all truth begins. This is the threshold where the soul takes the pen back from fear, where the inner voice no longer whispers but sings, where your very breath becomes a proclamation of freedom. You are not waiting anymore. You are not hoping to be noticed, hoping to be chosen, hoping to be seen. You are already chosen by the mere miracle of existing. You are already seen by the very intelligence that wove galaxies and still found time to sculpt you. You came here with everything you need. The light is not something you earn, it is something you reveal. It is peel back, one choice at a time. Each time you say yes to truth instead of safety, to presence instead of performance, to freedom instead of familiarity. It glows more with every risk of authenticity, every refusal to dim, every sacred moment you dare to be the real you. And the ego will still try to reclaim the reins. It will tell you that you must wait until you're perfect, that you must first heal every wound, gain every credential, earn every badge. But the soul knows better. The soul knows you are already a vessel for divine energy, not because you've become flawless, but because you finally stopped resisting your essence. You are not powerful because you force the light. You are powerful because you remember you are it. Let go of the guilt for wanting to be seen. That is not vanity. That is divinity, calling itself forward through your eyes. Let go of the fear that your truth will alienate you. If it does, let what was false fall away. Let go of the fantasy that one day the world will hand you a golden hour. The moment you declare your light sacred, that hour begins. You don't need the room to be ready. You just need to be willing to stand even if your knees shake. Willing to love even if your heart was broken. Willing to speak even if your voice wavers. Willing to show up not when you are done evolving, but precisely because you are. Life doesn't wait for you to become perfect. It rushes in the moment you become real. That's the miracle. That's the shift. That's the exact second when the caterpillar no longer mourns its shell, but stretches toward the wings it once feared were too much. And let me remind you of this one more time, not because you haven't heard it, but because repetition is the rhythm of remembering you are not your doubt. You are not your fear. You are not your past. You are not your wounds. You are not your title. You are not your roles. You are not your trauma. You are not your projections. You are not what they told you could or couldn't be. You are soul. You are presence. You are breath and stardust. You are poetry dressed in skin. You are the living expression of something eternal. And when you shine, when you finally let that truth breathe through you without filter, without compromise, you don't just change your life. You ignite a fire in the field of humanity that says, we are allowed to be ourselves. We are allowed to be enough. We are allowed to be radiant without explanation. You become an embodiment of what the world forgot, that we are all divine, all needed, all sacred, all vessels of light, and that no one has the authority to revoke that. Not culture, not shame, not history, not religion, not fear. There is no gatekeeper to your soul. There is no lock on the door of your truth. Only the illusion that you must wait. And today, this moment, is the undoing of that lie. Let it all go. Let go of the apologies, let go of the comparisons, let go of the guilt for simply existing in your fullness. Let go of the habit of asking for permission to be beautiful, to be bold, to be true. Let go of the need to earn your light and begin to embody it. From this day forward, live like the sun that forgot how to dim. Walk like you've already been welcomed by the cosmos. Speak like the breath in your lungs is sacred. Act like your life is the only stage where this particular soul of yours will ever dance. And When the fear arises, because it will meet it with compassion, but do not obey it. Let it sit beside you, but do not give it the map. You are not here to be led by fear. You are here to be led by Spirit. And Spirit is not waiting. The time is not coming. The time is now. You are not almost ready. You are already chosen. You are not lost. You are awakening. You are not broken. You are remembering. And the light you are, the infinite, radiant, untamable light, is no longer a seed waiting to bloom. It is a flame that has caught fire, and the world, ready or not, will have to adjust to your radiance. You've waited long enough. So this is it. This is the moment. You stop waiting for permission. You take up your space. You raise your voice. You forgive yourself. You love yourself. You remember yourself, and then you shine.